The fact that the Philadelphia Eagles are Super Bowl 59 champions and they ended the Chiefs dynasty doesn't feel real, but right behind me is a sign that it is real. Outside of Lincoln Financial Field, you're watching Philadelphia Eagles Now by Chat Sports. My name is Chase Sr., and as you can see, that is a banner that has been put up outside of the Eagles Stadium here in South Philadelphia with not just one, but 2 Lombardi trophies. It's a beautiful sight. The championship parade is tomorrow, which starts here. And then on that beautiful Friday, Valentine's Day of 2025, it'll go all the way down Broad Street and then end at the steps of the Art Museum. That's where Eagles players and coaches, Jeffrey Lurie, Howie Roseman, will be giving some championship speeches. We have you covered with some coverage. Myself and producer Chip, boots on the ground here in Philadelphia, going to catch up with Eagles fans, give you the best sights and sounds, and that's why you hit that subscribe button. As for what I'm bringing you on today's show, the Eagles are a few days removed from winning the Super Bowl against the Kansas City Chiefs in dominant fashion, and it really is shocking how they just shit pumped them, if I'm looking for a better word. But nobody expected that Philadelphia was going to go to New Orleans in the Superdome against Patrick Mahomes, Andy Reid, and Travis Kelce and thoroughly crush Kansas City like Philadelphia did. But now it's time to take a look ahead to the 2025 season, and I want to give you my perfect Philadelphia Eagles offseason plan, so let's do it. The Eagles are defending champions now, here in the calendar year of 2025 after the 2024 season, but it's a lot different from when the Eagles won their Super Bowl back during the 2017 season in Super Bowl 52. The epic nature of it is the same because back then the Eagles took down Tom Brady and Bill Belichick, and this year Mahomes and Reid. But I think this Eagles roster is in a much better spot looking ahead for the foreseeable future, not just 2025 as compared to that last Super Bowl championship. And this team is a lot younger. They're more equipped to have a sustained high level of success. And you think about this Eagles team, they're athletic, they're young, they're springy, and the core, most importantly, is intact. On the offensive side of the football, there's a chance that the Eagles could return almost every starter next year. Becton is going to be a free agent, but Jalen Hurts, Saquon Barkley, A.J. Brown, DeVonta Smith, the whole offensive line outside of Becton, Dallas Goedert are under team control. That's 10 of 11, and I think it's really important for Philadelphia to re-sign Becton, who I'll talk about more here coming up here in just a second. The defense is also in a great spot, although things are a little bit more murky as compared to the offensive side of the football. You have Jalen Carter, Nolan Smith, Moro Ojomo, Jordan Davis, Cooper DeJean, Quinyon Mitchell, CJ Johnson, Blankenship, all under contract, and all of those players will be back. That kind of sets the table for what you can expect this Eagles team to look like looking ahead to 2025. And I did the math yesterday. The Eagles are the 6th youngest team in the National Football League with an average age of about 26 years old. Now, we'll see what happens on defense with Darius Slay, Zack Baun, Nakobe Dean, and Milton Williams. But think about this, right? Going into the 2018 season, Carson Wentz was coming off that major knee injury in which it was a huge reconstruction. Now, the Eagles don't have any quarterback concerns like they did then when they're trying to defend their Lombardi trophy. And Jalen Hurts is a Super Bowl MVP. The Eagles free agents, big decisions to make for this ball club looking ahead, and Eagles owner Jeffrey Lurie, who now is etching in stone as one of the top owners in all of American professional sports with those 2 Lombardi trophies, said the other day, we're going to celebrate this championship right now, but we are bracing for somewhat of a difficult offseason in which some players do leave. That's the nature of the salary cap era, and that's what happens when you win a Super Bowl. Sometimes players will go elsewhere, and they're going to try to find more prosperity in the bank. And when you win a Super Bowl and you play a role in that, other teams are going to see that on that stage. They're going to give you some big-time dollars. And so get ready potentially for some marquee players from this Eagles 2024 team to not be with this team in 2025 because they're going to get bags and the Eagles will not be able to afford them. I think the Eagles, as part of my perfect offseason plan, need to bring back these free agents. Zack Baun, absolute game changer at the linebacker position. Historically, Howie Roseman hasn't always invested a lot into the linebacker position. We saw that level of play dip down after TJ Edwards had left Philadelphia previously, I think it's so important to bring back Zack Baun, a player who has great feel, great instincts, a great developmental story, considering he only played edge rusher and special teams for the Saints. He comes to the Eagles, he plays off-ball coverage linebacker for about $3 million, and he was a first-team All-Pro and a finalist for Defensive Player of the Year. And as the defense went, it was really carried in large moments throughout this season, which resulted in a championship by Jalen Carter and Zack Baun, making plays against the pass, making plays against the run, versatility, being used as a blitzer, just being so smart and heady. And so I'd love to see Baun come back. He could realistically demand $13 to $15 million, but I think the Eagles saw this year the importance of the linebacker position. Becton is another player who I think the Eagles need to retain, and we'll see what his price tag is going to be in free agency. He was a failed offensive tackle, first-round pick for the Jets. The Eagles turn him into a guard, and he ends up being a road grader, really good in pass protection. He found his home there and ended up being one of the top guards in all of football. A byproduct, truly, of Jeff Stoutland University. And you saw Becton this year, how emotional he was, first crying when the Eagles made it to the playoffs because he didn't find that success with the Jets. I asked him about that, and he said, it was just a great professional moment for me. And then again, on the field with this kid, looking up, ceiling of the Superdome, confetti falling, and now he's a Super Bowl champion. Tyler Steen is a backup third-round pick who this team drafted 2 years ago, so they could look at him as a cheaper option to step in for Becton, but I think offensive line continuity would be great for this run game and pass game. I think these players are too expensive, and unfortunately, I'm predicting that the Eagles are not going to be able to bring back Milton Williams and Josh Sweat. For Milton Williams, it'd be great to keep him. Dominant force at that defensive tackle spot, one of the top pass-rushing interior defensive lineman in the National Football League. He was great against the Chiefs, causing havoc, being disruptive, owning physically with speed and twitch and quickness at the snap that Chiefs offensive line, but teams across the league are all in the market for an interior elite pass rushing defensive tackle. Milton Williams is that. So while it would be great to retain a homegrown player who I think can be a star with more snaps because he's played under 50% of them throughout his career, you saw what he's capable of being against Kansas City on Sunday, but I think he's going to get $15 to $20 million per season, and so I don't think Philadelphia will be able to retain him. As for Josh Sweat, I think he's a really good player, 2.5 sacks against the Chiefs, who could get paid great money because teams are also looking for pass rush help. And in the background, you do have Jalix Hunt, who got significant snaps in the Super Bowl. He looks to be a really good player as a fourth-round pick out of Houston Christian, who started his college career as a safety, playing in the Ivy League at Cornell. I think with more snaps, he can be a player. He looked awesome against Kansas City, collapsing the pocket on multiple occasions. And then from defensive end to defensive tackle to take over for Milton Williams, I really like the development of Moro Ojomo, and I think that he can continue on that ascent. Jordan Davis can probably play more, but if you lose Williams, you lose Sweat, you're going to have to address depth pieces in free agency and in the draft. Can the Eagles also get anything? I'm talking any type of contributions from Bryce Huff. If Vic Fangio doesn't like him, chalk him up as a failed signing in free agency. Maybe you try to trade him away for a mid to late round pick. I'd also like to see the Eagles bring back, as far as depth goes, Oren Burks. Stepped in for Nakobe Dean after that bad injury in the playoffs, and he was great for this team. And in the Super Bowl last year against Kansas City when he was with the Niners, he was guarding Travis Kelce, got targeted 9 times, gave up 9 catches and a touchdown. He was not a weak spot like I was worried about him being a weak spot after that Nakobe Dean injury. And you're not sure when Dean is going to be able to come back because that's a severe injury that he suffered to that patellar tendon. And so Burks can give you good special teams play. Vic Fangio has that linebacker background where he's coached some of the best. Patrick Willis, you saw what he did with Zack Baun. You saw what he did with Oren Burks and Nakobe Dean. And so I think Burks can hold up well there if he needs to with that Nakobe Dean injury. And again, he can contribute on special teams. He should be pretty affordable. But big play after big play made by Burks in the postseason. You have to give a shout out to him. Isaiah Rodgers, would like to see the Eagles retain him as well, especially if they lose Darius Slay. He had hinted a few weeks ago, going into the NFC Championship game. That could be his last game as an Eagle. Just financially, the Eagles might move on, especially with how his contract is put together. And if the Eagles do move on from Darius Slay, Isaiah Rodgers, anytime that he was put in the game, he ended up making a game-changing play. Really good player with really good speed. And really from OTAs and minicamp all the way through training camp and the regular season, he was a baller for this Eagles defense. You also have Keely Ringo and Eli Ricks waiting in the wings too. So a good thing about the cornerback position for Philadelphia is that Howie Roseman has loaded up on depth there. Eagles do have to figure it out with Darius Slay, Dallas Goedert, because Slay, they might let him go due to his contract. Dallas Goedert is entering the final year of his deal. Do you reconstructure that? Because I think he has a cap hit of about $14, $15 million. Do you give him a contract extension to open up some financial wiggle room? Do you decide to move on, which could be a hard choice given Goedert has been a primetime playmaker for this team in the postseason. He leads the Eagles franchise in receiving yards in the playoffs. Physical, really good after the catch, really good blocker. Big element of the brotherly shove is him being in that backfield. He's great for this Eagles culture, but at that price tag, are the Eagles going to bring him back, especially with some of the injury concerns? He's one of the few players on this team that is 30 years old or older. Also, I want you to keep this in mind. Are the Eagles going to redo Saquon Barkley's deal? They gave him 2 years, $26 million in guaranteed money. Ideally, you don't have to, and Saquon, as we know, is a great leader and great for this Eagles culture, but after the season that he had, resetting the running back market might be on his mind after he won NFL Offensive Player of the Year and should have been named NFL MVP. What if the Eagles, though, let Milton Williams and Josh Sweat go, and then they trade for Myles Garrett? The Eagles are among the favorites to trade for Garrett. They have the resources to pull off that trade, draft capital, financial wiggle room. They also really value and are willing to invest in that defensive end spot. And so if I'm Howie Roseman, I'm making the call to my buddy Andrew Berry, who's the general manager for the Cleveland Browns, and I'm asking him what it costs, because that would be the ultimate flex for Philadelphia. You get a game-changing player, once-in-a-generation pass rusher who's had 14 sacks each of the last 2 years. You let Sweat and Williams go, and then you make the trade for Myles Garrett, and you have him, Jalen Carter, Jordan Davis, Nolan Smith, Jalix Hunt, Moro Ojomo as part of your defensive line for 2025 and beyond. That is a dangerous defensive line for Philadelphia. And honestly, financially, you could pull it off and save some money by going after Garrett while letting Williams and Sweat go if you add up their salaries with what they get from their future teams. Coaching staff. Eagles obviously need to hire an offensive coordinator. They need to keep defensive backs coach Christian Parker, who's a rising star. I think that Vic Fangio can develop him to be the next defensive coordinator for this team at some point. Do not let Clint Hurt out of the building, the Eagles defensive line coach who did wonders in developing the boys up front. At that offensive coordinator spot, I'm doing everything to hire Vikings quarterbacks coach Josh McCown, who did wonders with Sam Darnold and his development, learning under Kevin O'Connell, one of the top offensive minds in the game. But Kevin Patullo, who's the Eagles pass game coordinator and associate head coach, is a real option. And look, has Nick Sirianni earned the right to go to Howie Roseman and say, I want to elevate Patullo. We don't need to go outside of the building. I don't think the Eagles should worry about stability at the offensive coordinator spot. I think they have to go after, the best offensive coordinator, the best offensive mind, and the best play caller and play designer. I also think it's best to go outside of the building to bring in fresh and new ideas and concepts on the offensive side of the ball. It obviously worked with Kellen Moore. For Nick Sirianni, entering the final year of his contract in 2025, Eagles need to sign him to a contract extension, and they will. He's been one of the lowest paid head coaches in the National Football League, but he's built this culture. He's built a great coaching staff. The players absolutely love him. That culture is really important. He's wound up being a great manager, game manager for this Eagles team, and I think that he's in line for a big payday for Philadelphia this offseason, and he deserves it because Nick Sirianni, ladies and gentlemen, is a Super Bowl champion. NFL draft needs here defensive end, defensive tackle depth, possibly corner, outside and in the slot. Outside if you move on from Slay, in the slot to get a backup for Cooper DeJean. Do you bring back Avonte Maddox on a cheap deal? Had that huge pass breakup around midfield on that fourth down in the Super Bowl, possibly at safety because Blankenship is not under contract long term. He could earn a bag if he continues to play at the clip that he's been playing at. The Eagles also value offensive line. Maybe you add a running back 3 if you lose Kenneth Gainwell. Maybe you can bring him back because I think he's a really good backup running back, and I like what I've seen from Will Shipley, possibly tight end too. I like Grant Calcaterra, but the future of Dallas Goedert is obviously looming large. And then linebacker, given the uncertainty around Nakobe Dean, and we'll see what the market is for Zach Baun, but I think teams saw that he's a really legitimate player. In free agency, Jeffrey Lurie even said this, doesn't see the Eagles being too active after what was a historic offseason in free agency and in the draft for Howie Roseman, but the good news is the core is intact for the Philadelphia Eagles. That right there from Lincoln Financial Field is my perfect Philadelphia Eagles offseason plan. Championship parade coverage coming your way tomorrow on Friday here in Philadelphia. Don't miss it. Myself and producer Chip and Allie G, boots on the ground.